it gets conflated a lot when you talk about parents' rights, especially with the current school board. You say parents' rights, and immediately it's this red flag for them. And part of what I've been talking about is building back that parent council that we used to have in Temecula Valley that was done away with. They handpick, certain boards that they use to talk about, specific issues on special needs type of children, special ed, and nothing that brings in members from the community to sit down with these school board members and have honest two-way communication. And that's what's missing. Everything is kind of done in these dissemination of information. Here's what we've come up with. This is what we're doing. And there's no back and forth.
Well, hey, everybody, welcome to Our Watch. I am Tim Thompson, and we have a very special guest with us today, somebody running for school board in the Temecula Valley, Danny Gonzalez. Danny, so good to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're excited to have you running for school board. We've got, as you know, a big fight on our hands. Temecula Valley's got 4 open seats. There are 4 strong candidates running. You're one of them. Tell us a little bit about who Danny Gonzalez is.
Yeah, so I got involved in this about a year ago, and it started with my own experience in my own home and what was happening to my own kids through lockdowns and everything that was going on with masking policies. And so I got involved just to see if I could, make some changes to try and find some people to run for school board, because we were just getting shut out every time we'd ask questions, anytime we would try and reach out to our elected officials to get answers on the simplest of questions.
Right.
We were shut out. So I got involved in it to make some changes in that regard. And then the more I started looking, the more concerned I got.
Yeah.
It was, opening Pandora's box, really, because every time we looked at another issue, we'd see things in the national media and we'd say, well, they're not doing CRT in our schools. And you'd go find a resolution that talks about equity and all of these fluffy words, and It was exactly that. So so I got in this fight. I did a lot of research and tried to find candidates to run, and looked behind me, and everybody was pushing me for it, saying, Danny, you've done all the legwork.
Yeah.
We support you.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can see why people were kind of pushing you forward. You've got what it takes to be on the school board. We look at what's going on. A lot of people have been on the school board for a long time. They don't have skin in the game. You're a father. You've got kids. You want a good environment. Talk to us a little bit about your family life. Married, kids, stuff like that.
Yeah, married, happily married. My wife, Amanda. We have 2 kids, both students in Temecula Valley Unified Public Schools. I have a son who's in 1st grade, and my daughter just started 4th grade. And we're an active family. We do a lot. We're really involved in the community through sports and obviously our church community. And we've been here for about 3.5 years now. We moved in from Costa Mesa after living in Texas for a number of years, and we moved out here because some of the stuff that was happening back in Orange County just didn't fit with our values, and we moved out here. And found a home. It reminded us a lot of Fort Worth, actually, where we lived. Small town, kind of rural in some areas, but a real sense of community that we fell in love with immediately here.
Yeah. So you got skin in the game. You got kids in the school system. You want it to be a good environment, not only for those kids, but also their friends, their friends' friends, basically all the kids on campus. You want a good environment. And as a father, you understand that if you're going to have a good environment, that comes from great involvement on the parents' part and making sure they're in the loop. Talk to me and our audience today a little bit about your desire to make sure parental rights are upheld.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest part of my platform and what it's been. And, it gets conflated a lot when you talk about parents' rights, especially with the current school board. You say parents' rights, and immediately it's this red flag for them. And part of what I've been talking about is building back that parent council that we used to have in Temecula Valley that was done away with. They handpick, certain boards that they use to talk about, specific issues on special needs type of children, special ed, and nothing that brings in members from the community to sit down with these school board members and have honest two-way communication. And that's what's missing. Everything is kind of done in these dissemination of information. Here's what we've come up with. This is what we're doing. And there's no back and forth. So when we talk about parents' rights, literally every issue that I get into, I can trace it all back to the rights of parents to be involved in those decision-making processes. And it's not happening right now. It's not wanted. We've seen current school board members talk about things that have happened over the last couple of years, whether it was them being threatened, stalked, harassed, all of these things. And in a statement recently, one of the sitting board members said that the people responsible are running in this election. Accusing us of violence, accusing us of acts, criminal acts against these board members. And you can't help but remember, the California School Board Administration and the DOJ last year labeling concerned parents who spoke up at board meetings as domestic terrorists.
Right.
This is the way that they think about us. We're obstacles and we're not partners in our kids' education. And there's a way to get those people back in. It's by supporting our local PTAs, at least, getting these parents back active in the schools, getting them involved in their education. And it needs to start at the elementary level, because by the time these kids get into junior high and high school, these parents are already involved. They're already a part of our school system, and they're supposed to be centers of the community. And we've lost that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. One of the things that a lot of parents have had trouble with, besides, like you said, the masking and that kind of stuff, the shutdowns, is the talking to children about sexual matters. Yeah. And I think you and I both probably would agree, what two adults do in their bedroom, that's up to them. This is America. You're free to pursue happiness. You do whatever you want. This is America. However, those are conversations, whether they're heterosexual or homosexual or bisexual or any type of sexual. Those are conversations that should not be had with children. Those are conversations that should be taking place at the dinner table. What's your thought on this issue of the sexual indoctrination that's taking place on school campuses?
Yeah, it's a tough one, and you try and tread real lightly when you have this conversation, because I think we would both agree that we live in a great country where people are free to make their own decisions, and I think that we can do both. I think that we can have a school community that's inclusive of all people, free from harassment, period. Bullying and harassment has no place in our schools whatsoever. We've had some pretty bad bills that were introduced through, AB 1266 and 711 that made these kind of conversations mandatory in our schools. And I think as adults, I think we have a duty to understand these topics that we may be presented with. But when you start changing that, it's a very fine line, and we've seen it recently, over at Great Oak High School. I could care less that cousin Danny happened to be an openly gay man, hosting an assembly. But when you start talking about these topics, where's the line? And the line was crossed. They admitted that the line was crossed, but where was the accountability?
Right.
And when this is happening, and somebody's pointing a camera at it, it's easy to see, and it's easy to say, look, this is what we're talking about. And that was the point of even bringing it up, was, look, when you start having these conversations and you're doing it in private and in secrecy, you're encouraging counselors to shield the kids from their parents when they're having these kind of conversations. It all goes back to parents' rights. And what we need to be doing is encouraging families, especially if kids are struggling, especially when it comes to mental health. But all of this has been done under this guise of social emotional learning. And, it's been promoted through CASEL, right, which is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Chun Zuckerberg. And it's openly Marxist. And it's an attempt to change fundamentally, how we as Americans view each other. And it's divisive. And
Right.
I think we need to get rid of it. So that's kind of where I land on it. I think we can do both.
Yeah. You said the word divisive. We look at the ethnic studies that are taking place. That's, something being pushed from Sacramento. Talk to us about that. What's your thoughts on the ethnic studies and the oppressed and oppressive nature of what they're talking about?
What's really interesting is when I talk about that, I approach it from a place where, I am a Hispanic man, and I grew up in a predominantly Hispanic community in Garden Grove, and we didn't learn that stuff. We are a very inclusive society, especially here in Temecula. It's one of the things that we loved about this is we moved here, and there was a ton of military families, and my dad used to talk about, in terms of his military service, that, color, things like it doesn't matter when you're getting shot at, right? And so the military community itself is very inclusive of all races and all, nationalities. And I see that in our community. So I wonder why we're focused so much on equity. And when it comes to equity, again, it's this fluffy word. And the problem with equity versus equality is that there is no objective standard of truth. It's subjective. And the people that are deciding who, fits into those boxes, am I Hispanic enough? I get that all the time. Well, you look white. Well, okay, that's racist.
Right. Right.
I mean, I don't want my kids, my kids have a Hispanic last name. I don't want them to have to be judged on, the nationality of their grandparents. I want them to know that every kid has the potential for greatness, regardless of any of that. And I don't want my kids being taught that they're either oppressed because they're Hispanic or they are oppressors because they happen to have a Caucasian mother. And, where do they fit into that, and who's the arbiter of those, those kind of decisions?
Right.
And that's where it gets tricky, because we have basically bureaucrats that are deciding who fits into these boxes and who we're going to allocate resources to. And it's being done, in a way that is not across the board or fair. So I think it's wrong. It is divisive. Having kids look at each other and immediately having to judge them based on, the way they look and the color of their skin. These kids don't think that way. I know my kids don't. My kids don't know what racism is. They don't know the difference between black, white, brown. It's not something that they actively think about, and that's the innocence of children. And I think we're taking that away by forcing them to have these kind of conversations at a young age.
Right. Yeah, and it's telling somebody immediately, you are this.
Yeah.
Because of the color of your skin. And we grew up in an era that coming out of the Martin Luther King civil rights movement, where we were told to judge people based on the content of their character.
Absolutely.
Not the color of their skin. Yeah. So it seems as though they're trying to push us backwards, really. Yeah. And I don't think it's fair to our kids. Yeah, too much hard work went into making sure that we judge people on the content of their character. You are a person who has the endorsement of our sheriff, Chad Bianco.
Yes.
What's your thoughts on law enforcement on campus? Talk to us about that.
I love it. I've actually been working hard on this. There's a few things that are near and dear to my heart, and along with school safety, career technical education. But these are some of the things that I don't get to talk about a lot. We've been having meetings with local law enforcement agencies about school safety and how to make our schools safer, whether it be, training for active shooter drills or even just the day-to-day within our schools. And what I'm finding is that school policing is a lot different than just policing in the community. And what we really need within our schools to get real school safety is true community policing. And I think that's done through having a Temecula Valley Unified School District Police Department that is in Temecula Valley. We have our own sheriff, we have our own chief of police, we have our own lieutenant, our own police department that are people that want to be in that community. We can save money by having our own local police department that's trained, that does school policing only. It's not, I love Sheriff Bianco and I love our sheriff's department, but they deal with a lot of other stuff. They're SWAT, they're, flying helicopters around. School policing is a lot different, and they have to be integrated into those communities. The other thing is having that experience, having officers in every school, armed officers in every school, gives kids the opportunity to interact with police in a positive way, and having that first interaction with police be one that's positive. Instead of meeting, these police officers on the worst day of your lives many times. I think that having that relationship with police, and that ties into my other, pet project, which is career technical education, bringing those explorer programs into career technical education, bringing the fire sciences into career technical education. I think it changes that perception, which these officers, around the world have been kind of suffering for the last few years, which is changing that perception of how law enforcement has done, what they're there for, and then keeping our kids safe.
Keeping our kids safe.
All of it. Keeping the drugs out of our schools.
Right.
And so it's only done through community policing. They have to be integrated into the schools.
All right. Well, that is all the time we have right now. We just want to close out by giving you an opportunity to tell people how they can follow you, support you financially, support you by knocking on doors, all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Where do they go?
The best place to go is my website. And my website is Gonzalez for FOR TVUSD.com. You can find me on Instagram under the same handle, D Gonzalez, the number 4 instead of FOR TVUSD. Follow us, sign up, volunteer. We're we're going up against the 800-pound gorilla, and we're never going to raise as much money as they're dumping into keeping these incumbents in place. But every little bit helps. We've got a ton of things that we're working on: yard signs, flyers, and it's all just making those individual voter contacts, getting out and meeting people one-on-one, and sharing our message. And every little bit helps.
All right. Well, Danny Gonzalez, I look forward to November 8th when you get elected into that seat.
And the real work starts.
All right. Well, God bless you. Thank you for being here. I want to thank you all for tuning in online here. We will see you next time right here at Our Watch with Tim Thompson.